All right. So you want to do
We can do
BLM?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what is your belief about BLM?
So I am pro Black Lives Matter, um, and I am in a racially diverse Zoom group that's kind of started in the past few months, where we talk about race and just trying to help. Each of us are just kind of trying to help express our lived experience, and so that others can
Okay.
understand better kind of what we're going through.
Okay. So just for like in terms of definitions, there's sort of I think a little bit of confusion amongst a lot of people about like, so there's Black Lives Matter, sort of the rhetorical, the saying,
And the saying.
yeah, and there seems to be a sort of a wide range of beliefs between the two. Where would you care to say like where you stand in that and how you define Black Lives Matter?
I grew up in Kansas in an oxymoronic town called Liberal, Kansas, and had very little exposure to racial diversity or Black. I reconnected with one of two girls, sisters that I went to grade school with. One was a grade above me and one a grade below me, and have since found out their experience versus mine growing up in Liberal, Kansas, which was eye-opening. And so I am very pro the idea of we have systemic racism and we need to address it and should have been addressing it this whole time. And getting several, maybe not arguments on Facebook, but probably I'm raising a lot of eyebrows with a lot of my posts of my friends from Kansas.
Okay.
The organization, I have a lot of conservative family who will say it's Marxist. I haven't done a whole lot of research into that because to me, I just feel like, okay, can we just say that Black Lives Matter? And did a lot of kind of, yes, all lives matter, but that's, and trying to explain to people why that's not a great conversation.
So it sounds like maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you don't know very much about the actual organization, but you are sympathetic with the sentiment of Black Lives Matter.
So I know that it started, I listen to a lot of podcasts that are from Black voices, and so I know that it started many, I don't know, 10 years ago, with women talking, and I kind of know the crux of it. I haven't gone into, I've tried to research where the whole Marxist thing came from and whether that was, and then I just kind of thought, okay.
Does that matter to you?
No.
So if it was, if you were to find out that the organizers were in fact Marxists, that wouldn't, how would that make you feel?
I would still be able to say Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Because, and I actually...
Would it make you more reticent to say you support? Like, or would you feel the need to clarify when you say your support?
I used to go, I just moved over here this year, but to a church, a large church. And our pastor has become it's a kind of all over the place church. It's a Presbyterian church with very conservative thoughts and some very social justice oriented, liberal thoughts. And our pastor, though, in the past maybe 4 years, has really kind of come to understand how he should have been preaching about racism all along. Like, that is a central part of faith. So our church did a thing out on the way, and they did not have any Black Lives Matter. They made their own posters for people to hold.
Right.
Because of the BLM, how divisive it was within our congregation. But then other people came along and joined, and they had Black Lives Matter posters. And So we just did last week. We have a black person on staff and our head pastor, and they did a let's talk about Black Lives Matter. And Anthony, who grew up in Compton, talked, and other people, black people within our church, did a video about the importance of hearing Black Lives Matter, apart from the organization, apart from that, what that says to them, to be able to have people say that.
Right.
And so to me, it would not make any difference what the organization is. I think the saying is one that I can definitely get behind.
And your support of it is sort of contingent on the concept of like systemic racism and things of that nature. Like, and how, so like say on a scale of like 1 to 100, 100 being like full support, like where would you say you stood?
Full support
of Black Lives, of your definition of the concept?
My definition of the concept, I'm 100% Black Lives Matter.
Okay. Do you feel like what sort of evidence could be presented to you that might shift your confidence, if any?
In me saying Black Lives
Or
Matter?
in saying you're 100%.
Behind my definition of it?
Yeah.
I don't really, I mean, that was one of the questions was, can't we say something else like Black lives are important, or because of and you know, I don't care if people say that, I'm going to continue to say Black Lives Matter. I think it can mean two different things, and in my definition, even if I found out that one of the ladies who first started it said something pro-Marxist, it wouldn't keep me from saying Black Lives Matter.
Is there something though that
could?
Yeah, like if you know, say for example, like, and I'm just hypothetical, like, one of the calls of Black Lives Matter was or is like defund the police, and like if you saw information that suggested like maybe something like 80% of the Black community wanted as many, if not more, police in their neighborhoods, like would that shift your confidence in the way you're conceiving of
that? Would not, that particular thing, because that is yet another, what does defund the police mean,
right,
which is a whole nother topic, which if I think it's an unfortunate name personally, because I think
with the defund,
yes.
Or yeah, okay,
I think the concept of we should not be having police officers do some of the things that they are doing. Like, I think we should have trained therapists going in when somebody's suicidal, or I think there are other ways that we should be handling some of the things that we are putting on the police officers' plate. And I think training needs to change. I think there's a lot about the police that could be changed. I think defunding the police is a term that I have a lot of Black friends, and a lot of them are like, we don't want there to not be police. That's not a thing. But they also a lot of them don't think to call the police when there's a problem. There are issues there. So I do get that we need to look at the police and how we're doing that. So even if it was the defund the police thing, that would not be a thing. I can't think of what would.
Right. Okay. And if there were evidence, or if there was information out there that would change how you think about BLM, would you want to be aware of it?
Yeah, I mean, yes. If somebody, I think the hard part is, as in my own family, it was a great example of how we very much have, what do I want to say? Our sources of information come from incredibly different places. We tend to disregard anything that doesn't fit into our own narrative.
When you say we, it sounds like you're including yourself.
I think what is it? Confirmation bias runs in all of us. I just think that is, we are seeing that play out right now.
Right. So it sounds like you're sorry, go ahead, continue.
You know, it is amazing to me what, personally, I am looking at some very smart people who are believing things that I find incredible,
right.
despite no evidence, and yet some.
Do you think the smart people don't have evidence?
I think that there is yet. I think that, and this is moving into the election. I think we have a president who, to me, has been incredibly divisive, has said horrific things that I would have gotten my mouth washed out of soap with. And yet my parents are both not seeing the problem there. And it floors me because...
Like what, for example? Like what would you... what would a quote be that...
I mean, just making fun of starting at the very beginning, making fun of the reporter who had, just all of the many, many, many things, grabbing women by the pussies, all those things from before he ever became the person that became the nominee. He showed us who he was. And it shocks me that people are able to overlook that. And many Christians, as a Christian, I'm horrified at what people are able to get behind and not see or back because of their own other beliefs on either abortion or taxes or whatever it be. So I think this has shown me in many ways just how strong that tribalism of my party over everything else can be. And it's really disheartening to see people who I feel like should be speaking up in the face of craziness.
Is it possible that the people that you just described are that there's another reason while they, like, it's not that they're overlooking these things, that there's like another, like you talked about how people are in sort of information bubbles. I don't think you said bubbles, but that's kind of,
yes, that is.
And that perhaps they have information that you don't, and it's not that they're overlooking these things.
So, and I think for my parents who are divorced, and then my brother, who was so far left that he's now over here. He's a conspiracy theorist, and so he's, he's so. My mom very much acts on fear. So fear of Muslims was a huge one at the beginning. They're going to take over, and as a Christian, that was scary to her. Then it was fear of all the people coming over the border, and so she can overlook the children in cages, which is so crazy to me that my mom can do that, and those were not brought in by their parents. Those were brought in by coyotes. I know if I turn on Fox News, I know exactly where she's getting all of her information. And if
you were to discover that those children were in fact not brought in by their parents and were trafficked, would that change your mind?
No, because I still don't think they should be in cages. And there's enough parents without their children that's not the case. Like, it's just not. But that's what
So, but this getting back to the idea of you suggested that, like, the media, like the sort of bubbles that people are in, and that you yourself were sort of aware of your own participation in that. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
I didn't say this, but I grew up Republican and thinking Republican good, Democrat bad, like my whole life. And then when I started being more discerning, and quite frankly, politics, I have always felt like, okay, you could, if I was a Democrat, I would be thinking the Republicans were wrong. Like, this is so bipartisan. You know, I just always have felt like you're going to pick whichever side you're on and fight for that team. However, when Trump came in, it was a game changer for me because he's, in my opinion, mentally unstable. And so to me, there was a lot more at stake than Democrat, Republican. I never thought I'd vote for Hillary.
Right.
But given my choices of Trump and anyone else, I could never vote for Trump. And so,
what do you make of the fact that he garnered a higher percentage, not just more votes, but a higher percentage of votes from blacks, Hispanics, Muslims, gays than any Republican ever?
And that is, we had this conversation, and I have a gay child who cannot imagine why anyone would vote for him. That is,
but be that as it may,
but what is, we had this conversation, and just amongst the Zoom group that is diverse, like, what did the people in the black people think happened there? They kind of alluded to, like, was it P. Diddy, or, you know, some of the people stepping up, and I talked to my mom, and she's like, well, Chris, he's the best black, basically getting ready to say compare him to Abe Lincoln. She fell just short of that, but, you know, he's done more for anybody than, and I think, and she felt like he had a very strong black support. And I said, well, I mean, 18% of black males and 9% of females. That's not overwhelming. And she
it is double, though.
It is, I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I'm getting at.
And I don't really know, other than I think he did have a great, so what I was going to say about my mom, she was under the impression that a lot of black people he was not racist because all these black people, Candace Owens, you know, all the black people who are conservative that are on Fox News. And so she just felt like he had a huge black following. And I do think, I said, there are black conservatives, and they're also partly on the abortion issue, and partly on because there are a lot of strong Christian black people.
Right.
So but I don't know exactly what the uptick is. I can't even imagine. We've kind of talked about it amongst that group, and just in talking to my mom, and even the conversation of, can you vote for him?